Let's return now to Gaza. And Hamas says the Israeli response to a new US proposed plan for a temporary ceasefire fails to meet, and I quote, any of the just and legitimate demands of its people. It comes as the humanitarian situation worsens, with aid groups, among them the UN, warning of an absolute catastrophe in the Strip. During a meeting of the UN Security Council earlier this week, Palestine's ambassador broke down as he appealed for help on behalf of his people. Let's have a listen.
Dozens of children are dying of starvation. The images of mothers embracing their motionless bodies, caressing their hair, talking to them, apologizing to them. It's unbearable. How could anyone tolerate this sorrow? Excuse me, Mr. President. I have grandchildren. I know what they mean to their families. And to see the situation of the Palestinians without us having hearts to do something is beyond the ability of any normal human being to tolerate.
Well, I'm joined tonight by Danon, Israel's ambassador to the UN. I'm wondering, Mr. Danon, when you heard that testimony and before that a surgeon's testimony saying that he hadn't treated any combatants but only children, I wonder what was going through your mind and how did it make you feel?
You know, when I listened very carefully to the testimonies, I asked myself why the Palestinians cannot even mention Hamas. You know, I have been to the Security Council hundreds of times, listening very carefully to the Palestinian representative. Not even once since the war started, he mentioned Hamas. So yes, Samia, there is suffering in Gaza. No one can deny it, but the blame is on the shoulder of Hamas. They were the one who started this war 600 days ago. They are the one who are rejecting an offer that was presented by Ambassador Witkoff only a few days ago. And we said yes, and they said no. Now they're thinking about it. But the problem is Hamas, it's not Israel. The minute Hamas will release the 58 hostages, will lay down their arms, then it will be quiet and peaceful in the region again. So there is...
I understand that's what you're saying, but so you're not willing to take any responsibility for the airstrikes, for the ground invasion, for the level of destruction and starvation in Gaza?
I take responsibility for the lives and well-being of the 58 Israelis being held captive. This war will not end as long as we have hostages in Gaza. And no UN resolution will change that. No speeches, no shows will change that. The fact is that we have hostages. We are determined to bring them back home. And if we want to end their suffering, it's very simple. Release the hostages now, and then we can think about what comes after. But we will not finish the war.
Interesting. I'm pleased you brought up the hostages.
Are still in Gaza.
Let's focus on the hostages then. It's also the will of the hostage families that Israel stops these airstrikes. It's been reported that many of the hostages were killed either when Hamas was, or the people that were keeping them hostage, be it other jihadi groups, were approached by ground troops or in Israeli airstrikes. The majority of hostages that were freed were through discussions and through a ceasefire period, not during a period of fighting. Why will you not listen to the hostage families?
So I agree with you on this topic, Samia. We prefer to release the hostages through negotiations. That's why we accepted the offer that was presented to us. And it's not a perfect offer. It's not something we wanted to accept, but we decided that it's the best in order to bring back more hostages back to Israel. So we said yes, Hamas said no. But if we cannot release them through negotiations, then we will have no choice. We will use our military power in order to fight Hamas, eliminate Hamas, and bring the hostages back.
Even if that risks the lives of your own citizens?
Well, as I told you earlier, we will try always and we will prefer the negotiations. But once we realize that there is no partner to negotiate, we cannot just leave them behind. You know, every day, you know, the situation is getting worse. We heard testimonies about the conditions that are being held chained in the tunnels. They don't receive any food. You spoke about starvation. The only starvation in Gaza is the starvation of the hostages. That's
So you're denying that there are hungry children, babies dying. These are not my accounts.
Those are lies.
You won't allow journalists into Israel, but these are the accounts of British, American doctors, Israeli human rights groups, people who are in touch. Multiple times I've interviewed people on the ground working there. So you're denying the accounts of hundreds of doctors.
You know, I listened to Mr. Tom Fletcher from the UN claiming that 14,000 Palestinian babies will die within 48 hours. Then he had to retract his words and apologize and acknowledge that it was not true. Aid is coming into Gaza today through two mechanisms, through trucks and through the US new initiative, which distributed 2 million meals in the last few days. So
but you're not concerned at all, are you, that babies are dying then? Are you concerned at all by the images you see on Sky News' screens, on multiple screens of babies starving, babies dying, children escaping fires from Israeli airstrikes?
So as I told you earlier, I don't accept your claim that there is starvation in Gaza. I told you the only starvation is the hostages. We saw the way they came out. And by the way, when you look at the pictures on Sky News, you don't see people starving. But when I look at the hostages coming out from the tunnels, I see their faces emaciated. I met one of the hostages who lost 30 kilos while he was held in a tunnel. So now aid is coming into Gaza, and still.
But by your assumption that the Israeli hostages are starving, then so too that means other people are starving. The UN says people in Gaza are at the risk of imminent famine. Only 600 of the 900 trucks that were supposed to go in have gone in so far. We've seen the fallout of the kind of humanitarian aid that we're supposed to give. I tell you what, let's listen to what OCHA says.
Allow me to answer your claim.
Bear with me, Mr. Danon.
Show me something else. Allow me to answer your claim. The UN is playing a game here. The UN is not cooperating with the new initiative.
Ambassador to the UN. So you're saying you don't trust the UN?
No, absolutely not. Look what happened in the last 2 days. You know, the US opened 2 logistics centers. They distributed 2 million meals, and the UN decided to boycott these efforts. Moreover, there were a few NGOs who decided to work with the...
Well, you won't allow UNRWA to distribute.
And the UN threatened those NGOs that they will take them out of the database of the UN if they will continue to cooperate. So I asked myself, do the people at the UN really care about the
Mr. Danon,
or they care about
bear with me. I want to bring you a clip from the spokesperson of OCHA, Jens Lurker. Let's listen to that together and then we'll talk again. Thank you.
Gaza is the hungriest place on earth. And the aid operation that we have ready to roll is being put in an operational straitjacket that makes it one of the most obstructed aid operations, not only in the world today, but in recent history.
Gaza is the hungriest place on earth, Danny Danon.
So I would advise you to call this official to your show, Samia, and ask him why the UN decided to boycott the new initiative of the US.
They're saying that you have placed an operational straitjacket.
Why actually they are boycotting these efforts, and moreover, they are threatening the Palestinians not to cooperate. So the UN is actually working with Hamas, and they have the same goal to prevent aid from coming into Gaza. And two more
so the whole UN structure, multiple nations that are represented by the UN, including your own, they are all against Israel, is what you're saying?
No, I'm saying very clearly, the organization in Gaza, specifically OCHA and Mr. Tom Fletcher, they prefer to spread lies against Israel rather than promote humanitarian aid into Gaza. If they really care about the people in Gaza, they should cooperate with the US immediately. And by the way, next week, 2 more centers will be open in Gaza. And I expect UN NGOs to cooperate with this effort, not to boycott it.
And what about the 200,000 people that have been forced to move yet again, probably the 5th, 6th time that they've been asked to move by Israel? 200,000 people displaced in the last 2 weeks.
Sana, if you have an idea for us, how can we bring the hostages? I'm open to listen to that. but I know that there are only two ways.
Well, I'm not a negotiator. I don't represent Israel or
As I
Hamas.
told you, there are two ways.
How do you think is best?
Negotiation.
Do you
we
really
are
believe
negotiating.
Israeli airstrikes, the displacement of 200,000 people, the starvation that you deny of people, the Palestinian people, is going to bring your hostages home? Because the hostage families don't believe that. They have practically begged Prime Minister Netanyahu and your colleagues in the government, in the Knesset, to stop the bombings, if only not for the safety of the Palestinians, for the sake of the Israeli hostages.
So I meet the families of the hostages almost every week. You have different opinions. The government is determined to bring them back home. We prefer negotiations, but we are determined. If it doesn't work through negotiations, yes, we will use our military power to bring them back home. We cannot, our Jewish morality will not allow us to leave them behind. And the sooner the world will understand it, the faster this war will end. Putting pressure on Israel will not help this time. The pressure should be on Hamas to accept the ceasefire. There is an offer on the table. So I would advise you and others who are trying to push Israel to ask Hamas officials why they reject the offer which is on the table right now, which will allow...
As we do, and their concern is that Israel intends to occupy Gaza, which a number of your colleagues and counterparts in the Knesset have actually spoken out. So you, Mr. Danon, you deny starvation in Gaza. You haven't addressed the 200,000 people displaced. You don't seem to be concerned by Israeli airstrikes, which have killed more than 54,000 people. Right now, a conservative figure, more than 3,000 children killed. And you say that you want your hostages back. What next?
Samia, you keep repeating the numbers and those lies. And you can do it 50 times, it will not be the truth. Those numbers are not correct. It's coming from the Hamas. We don't accept it. I agree with you that there is suffering in Gaza, but I'm reminding you that the blame is on Hamas and it can end tomorrow.
But the suffering is acceptable.
It can end tomorrow morning. So if you people really care about Gaza, they should realize that Hamas should not be part of the equation.
Well, I think journalists care about everyone involved, including the hostages and the Palestinian people. The suffering, though, continues, doesn't it, Danny Danon? And that's the concern for everyone, hostage families and the Palestinian people. Finally, what about the fact that Martin Griffiths says that he believes this is a genocide? That's what he's told Sky News.
Well, that's a blood libel. I have no word for that. When you look at the definition of a genocide, you realize that you need the intention of killing. No one can blame us for intention. And you look at what happened, more than a year and a half. We have the military power to finish this war within a week or a month. We didn't do it because we apply our force and we take into consideration the population in Gaza. That is why it's so sophisticated, why it is so challenging. That's why it's taking us so long to finish this war. But we will continue to fight Hamas and to do our best to minimize civilian casualties. But as I told you earlier, we can end it tomorrow morning. There is a proposal on the table. The government of Israel accepted the proposal. Hamas rejected it again.
OK, Danny Danon, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. Thanks very much indeed for joining us live from New York.
Thank you, Samia.